Okay, here we go. I just threw a message up there. Some weird message. Anyway, we probably ain't gonna wait around too long on this one, um, as it's getting late here, and this is just kind of an impromptu because I got tired of filming shorts. And I can't tell, but I think my camera's a little fuzzy. See if that's, oh, that's a little better. All right. Of course, I've been staring at a phone screen for a while. Some eyes might be a little screwed up. All right, we got one in here. Some people are starting to show up. We'll see how many we get here. This is a Monday night on President's Day. I don't imagine we're going to get too many. I'll let it go here for another 30 seconds and then I'm going to get rolling. People can watch it after the fact. Oh, damn, we jumped from 1 to 7. All right, I guess we're getting rolling here. All right, everybody. This is kind of an impromptu chat. Hey, CB. Yeah, impromptu chat tonight. Mostly just because I've been aggravating the Remington fanboys, and I just want to say right now for everyone, if you prefer shooting Remingtons over Colts, that's fine. I don't care. I mean, hey, Sabater. Hey, Chris. Um, so yeah, if you like those Remingtons, that's fine. I'm gonna say that I've only got a couple complaints with my Remington. Well, three. It fouls out pretty quick when I'm shooting historical loads, not your modern lubed up, target shooting loads. I'm talking shooting a historical load. It comes up, fouls out quick. Mine likes to dump hot caps. So for whatever reason, um, it likes to dump a hot cap right in here, and it not an enjoyable experience when you do that. Um, and let's see, what was the other one? Um, yeah, it fouls out, dumps a hot cap. Oh yeah, and then it rakes my knuckle on my middle finger. Terrible. Oh, it's bad. It is really bad on that. Um, so yeah, that's my big takes on mine. But other than that, I mean, they're pretty good gun. They're pretty solid gun. I actually thought about converting mine to 45 Colt at one point, but then I found out that the conversions, I don't like the newer conversion cylinders that's offered out there, the ones with the loading gate. I like the old style that they had better, and so yeah, those new ones I'm not gonna bother with it because with the old ones they had the 5 chambers drilled out in the positions where they originally been, and then there wasn't enough room for the 6, so they just left that space empty. So you're loading 5. I load 5 anyway. But on the new one, they've got them all evened out, so you don't have that dead spot to set your hammer. You don't have that safety spot. So I'm not real fond of that design, so that's why I didn't mess with it. But anyway, all right. So yeah, we got Doug in, we got Chris, Sabater, CB. Um, anyways, so yeah, like I said, I've been hammering Remingtons here on the chat or on the shorts here lately, and I thought tonight I'm just going to do an honest to god comparison of the two, not comparison of the modern ones because the modern ones on the modern reproductions, the Remingtons are better than the originals, and the Colts are inferior to the originals, in some respects. So it's not real fair to try to say that it was better back in the day because the reproductions are better. Uh, yeah, that was fun. And I was gonna get one of the Cokes, but I went over to my mother's, and the only thing she's got screw tops. So I was like, well, what the hell? I'll use it. Um, but yeah, I drank my last, opened my last Coke in a glass bottle, and then I was sitting there thinking, oh, I should have done a video with that. But, and the store didn't have any more. But anyway, so yeah, tonight's topic, and of course we got the airsofts out tonight, is, comparison Remington versus Colt. And we're going to talk about the benefits and the not benefits of both of them. So the pros and cons, I guess, is what I should have said. It's getting late. I'm tired. I didn't sleep worth a darn last night. Anyway, And like I said, we're using modern reproductions to talk about the originals, so it's kind of a unfair bias on there, but we're going to do the best we can. Um, so of course, on one short that I had uh, earlier today, you should have said something, Saboteur, because I just got rid of one. Um, this essentially, internally, is a Colt design. Um, so yeah, there's that. Colt had the monopoly on the market until his patent expired. And after that, pretty much anybody that made a revolver copied Colt. There's a few exceptions that people doing things different, but um, yeah, it's pretty much just a Colt copy. But anyway, trying to compare the two, yeah, one of the things that people say is the cylinder swap thing. That doesn't come about when these first come out. That is more of the cartridge conversion era thing, and it's short lived because Remington decides to pay Smith and Wesson royalties on the Rollin' White patent. But yeah, when they went to the cartridge conversions, yeah, swapping cylinders that was a thing because by the time you take out that cylinder, and they're the ones that have that back plate on them, by the time you take that cylinder, pull that back plate, push every one of those cartridges out, load them back up, you're at the same reloading speed as you are with the old paper cartridges. And so having an extra one with that back plate that was made for the gun, and that's the thing, you'd have to get them made for the gun, you could swap it out and then, you wouldn't have to reload for another cylinder full. But the whole thing with Clint Eastwood with 15 cylinders in the belt, one, you wouldn't be able to keep the belt on very long. You might as well have about 2 walkers on your belt. And I don't think anybody really cared to carry that many. So yeah, the swapping cylinders, and if you look at the original ones in the cap and ball era, and Snapper's Antique Firearms Unlimited, he's had 2 originals, and on the cap and ball eras during the Civil War production runs, you're not going to swap cylinders. You're not going to pick one up off the ground, pull a cylinder out of it, and swap it into yours. It's just not going to happen because the machining on these is not to the same quality that the Colt machining was. Now, Colt had, well, if you start from Hartford in 1848, Colt had 12 years between 1848 and 1860 to get his machining practices down to a science. Remington comes out producing these, in the late 1850s. They really don't have the time, and once they get into the war production, definitely don't have the time to really fit these to where they're as pristine as like what a Colt is. They have looser tolerances, and so yeah, the swapping the cylinders thing, that's not going to happen. And historically, when you're talking with troops, swapping cylinders is not a thing on either one of them, the Colts or these. When you're talking about regular Federal Army, what the tactic was is you'd have your front line of troops, they'd fire their 6 shots, they would fall back in line, the next one would come up and fire their 6, and while they're falling back in line, they start reloading on horseback. And yes, they did reload individual paper cartridges and individual caps on horseback. It was expected of every trooper to be able to do that. And if you want a great video on that, go check out the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry YouTube channel, 11th OVC. I don't remember how far back that video is, but they've got a full video on it where they all got on horseback. They all went at different gaits on the horse and reloaded their revolvers on horseback. And you know what? They were able to do it. It's not fun. Definitely not fun. It would be easier to swap a cylinder if you could do that. But historically it didn't happen. It was loaded that way. The swapping cylinder thing is going to be later on, and it's going to be more of the civilian market anyway too. And that's the one thing that's documented when you do see cylinder swapping, especially with Colts. It's mostly on the civilian market, with one exception, and that was in 1850. And General Harney, about 1850-ish, I should say, set aside 12 soldiers. That's it. A grand total of 12 soldiers that were issued dragoon revolvers, and they were given 2 extra cylinders each. And that was the thing, is to try to test that to see if the swapping the cylinder made a difference in combat. And it obviously didn't, because they didn't stick it with it. Now, the thing of it is it's not 100% clear if that was swapping with the actual Colt Dragoon revolvers or the Patterson, because there were still some Patterson rifles lingering around at that point. The Patterson had not completely died. The Patterson revolvers lasted better than the pistols did. But yeah, they were still floating around. There were still a few of those around, so it's not 100% clear. But even if it wasn't Um, with the Pattersons, if it was this other airsoft that I got here, it's not difficult to swap the cylinders on these, and it wouldn't be difficult on horseback. And I'm going to demonstrate that here. And I'm going to use my dog leashes for reins. So if I'm a cav soldier, got the reins in my hands, I fired my last shot, I'm going to take the gun in my rein hand, and you see I've got the gun firmly in my hand with the reins. I'll bring her back to half cock. I'll swap that wedge, and yes, they would swap that easy. On the Dragoons and the Walkers, the wedge is actually a wedge, so it swaps easier. Anyway, drop that loading lever down. Barrel comes off, and I was just fiddling and it come off. That shows how easy it is. You take the cylinder off, and we'll just say they're carrying it in a pocket. Reach in the pocket, put it back in. You know, so I got that barrel tucked in with this finger. I'm still holding everything together. You swap, and you're back in business. It could be done. It could definitely be done. Trotting on horseback, it could still be done. Like I said, most of the times when soldiers would engage, they'd fire their rounds, and then they would fall back to reload. That is if they didn't draw the saber first, which was usually the Union cavalry tactic, was draw saber before drawing pistol. So, and then we'll kind of move along there. So, yeah, that's on the swapping on cylinders. Didn't happen in combat with the Remingtons, but it is noted historically with the Colts. But I've never seen it really mentioned with the Colts in combat situations in the Civil War, with the exception of the Missouri Guerrillas. There's a few accounts of them swapping, and same thing. So, I've got this other airsoft here. And if you're wondering if I got a London model, no, I didn't. I swapped this with my 73 single action airsoft. But this one, the wedge, does come out with relative ease. And back in the day, I don't think they were as tight as some of these reproductions. Some of these reproductions require a jackhammer to get out of there. All right, we got quite a few in. We're at 16. This is one of the best chats we've had. Task Force Tyler, how we doing, bud? Ryan and Diane is in. All right. So anyway, on this Navy, the wedge does come out. Now, the spring is a little loose on it because the spring has actually been chipped. But other than that, the wedge is about the right tension. Once you get it here, the wedge doesn't fall out. That's what that screw does, is prevent that wedge from coming all the way out. And you just grab the barrel, and you can swap the cylinder. And so some of the historical accounts of that, one of them that I just come across recently, in fact, I put a feeler out on Facebook to find historical accounts of swapping cylinders on Remingtons, and I found more on Colts. Yet to find one on Remingtons. So anyway, another account of that was a Pony Express rider, and this is about 1860, talking about how, he was getting ready to go for a ride. He adjusted his Colt and made sure that he had his 2 spare cylinders in his pocket loaded in case he ran into trouble on the trail. And so he doesn't mention what Colt he had. And so at this point in 1860, there's several options available. More than likely, I'm going to bet it was one of the Navy models. Could have been a Dragoon. Could have been. But, Pony Express riders had to keep their weight pretty light. And it even could have been a pocket model, too, for all we know. It could have been a pocket model that didn't have a loading lever, and that's why he had 2 extra cylinders. But that's where you find it noted. Mostly it's Colts when you see anything about cylinder swapping. And anybody that wants to complain that, or say that Remingtons swap better than Colts, the easiest cylinder swap would be a Smith & Wesson tip-up design, and I think it's that Army model one, the bigger one they had. If that had shot a more stout cartridge, that would be the easiest. You just tip the barrel up, pull the cylinder up, put it in, drop the barrel down. It'd be a lot faster than on a Remington. But, yeah, and, that's the truth of it, is the Remingtons didn't swap. The Colts did. But thankfully on the reproduction market, Remingtons do swap now. And Colts do, but they're a lot more difficult than they would have been back in the day. Because trying to drift that wedge out, trust me, that's why I use the Navy for that demonstration. I have an 1860 Army here. And this is another airsoft, of course. I can push all day on that son of a gun, and it's not going anywhere. This one is one of those that requires a jackhammer to get out of there. So Yeah, this one's definitely not going to be swapping a cylinder. All right. Shootist 1873 is in. How we doing? West Covina, hey. Yeah, West Covina. I've been bashing the Remingtons here lately. Okay, Tans. Now is the next thing I was going to get into is the sights on the Remington. So yeah, the Remington does have better sights, but one thing that people have said is that the Colt sights move, and that's what makes them inferior. The thing of it is on the Colt sight is that once you bring her back, you have plenty of time to acquire the target and fire. And I have opened mine up because the sights on this are terrible. They got such a shallow V in the back and such a wide sight at the front, and I think that's more of a problem with the reproductions than it is the originals. Because I really didn't look at the sights on the original that Garrett had, but anyway, yeah, I've had to open them up. You have to do that on the reproductions. So the Remington definitely gets a bonus point there for the reproductions. Is that yeah, they have out of the factory a very good sight. But once you get these opened up, these are pretty good too. Here's the problem historically, and really, I mean, shooting is when people say that this is a inferior sight because it moves, and that's one thing I just had with a comment on one of my Remington shorts here. They say is that the sights are fixed on this one, the sights move on this. The problem is when you're shooting, by the time that your eyeball notices that that sight has moved, that bullet has already impacted the target. So for me, it's not an issue. Now, if you're talking about on a Star double action revolver, yeah, no, that is definitely they should have put a fixed sight on the frame on that one. So yeah, if you're going to compare the Remington to the double action Star, that point is extremely valid. But like I said, when you take aim with that and you pull the trigger, that bullet's on target before you know that it even moved. Alrighty, howdy, Rock. Coming in from Tennessee. Let's see. Shootist 1873 says my Repro's wedge was completely unmovable until around 200 rounds, and then she finally loosened up. Yeah, and that's one thing. Like on this 1860 Army, this 51 Navy, I got extremely lucky with, and the fact that wedge does come out with relative ease. But all my Dragoons and my Walkers, they're the actual wedge-shaped wedge, and so you can pop them out with your thumb all day long. In fact, you can over tighten them with your thumb too, and that's how I got my second Walker so cheap, because somebody had driven the wedge in too far, locked their gun up, so they took it to Cabela's and sold it. Cabela's considered it to be a broken parts only gun, and so I wound up by the time, and they was running a store special with a discount on they had a sale on black powder firearms, so they gave me the sale discount. Plus, it was already marked down because it's a parts gun, and I had a bunch of club points. I walked out of that store with a Walker for $75 to $100. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, it was dirt cheap for me. Although I used up my points I was using to save for 308 at the time that I never eventually ever got. But yeah, shoot us the third model. I mean, you got the rounded trigger guard, you got the leaf spring, you've got the square back cylinder notches. Really, between it and the second model Dragoon, the only difference on the second model is you got those rounded. No, I take that back. You Birdie started producing with a square back. So between the second and the third, it comes down to, do you like a rounded trigger guard or do you like a square back trigger guard? I wouldn't go with the first model because they still got the old V spring. If you break one of those things are a pain to get loose and out of there. Whereas if you ever happen to have a spring break on the other two, you just screw it and put a new one in. One thing I will tell you is, you might want to look, and depending on how it does, if it drops the loading lever, I had to do a quick fix on mine. It wasn't hard to do, but I tried to fix the dropping loading lever on the third model, and it didn't work. But then I did it on the Whitneyville, and the Whitneyville hasn't dropped it since I fixed it. So it's hit and miss. But I think what it is it actually is your birdie just puts that dovetail thing in. There's just a little too much room between the dovetail catch and the loading lever itself, and so that's why they fail, because there's not enough engagement there. All right, so we've talked about the cylinder swap issue. We've talked about the sights. Um, I guess we can go on to the loading lever, and that's one thing that the Remington clearly has a disadvantage on. So this often gets misidentified as a 58 Remington when it's actually the 1863 New Model Army. And the reason it gets called 58 is because it has the 1858 patent date, which really applies to this part right here, this web. And so this web, the reason it is there is so that this does not break off when you're loading it. Because this is about like a not a Patterson, excuse me, about like a Lamat loader, loading lever, and then it's very, very weak. This whole arrangement is real weak. Trying to remember who it was. Somebody that was here on YouTube. I can't remember who it was, but they showed me pictures of their Remington, and they had loaded a bullet that was a little bit too hard lead. Broke this thing. I mean, when they broke it, they broke everything. They broke the screw, they broke the slot where the screw goes through on the loading lever, and they just ruined the whole thing. So yeah, the loading lever on this is it's not good. It's not good at all. And also, you know, this is cut to accept a conical bullet, but the plunger is not. Whereas on a Colt, the plungers were cut for conicals clear back into the Walker era. So yeah, the loading system on this was not well thought out. The one thing I do like about the loading system is how it catches this cylinder pin, which makes it real nice. I wish they could have done something similar to that on the 1873 single action Army, but they didn't. So you know, that is the one definite clear advantage on the Remington is, you know, on cleaning. When I take it down, I've got two parts if I just do a quick clean. If you're doing an in-depth clean, however, the Colt. And, you know, that brings another one to the Colt. People say that the Colt's a disadvantage because of all the screws and individual parts, and that's kind of hit and miss for me, really. Because yeah, those screws come loose. You got to check them pretty regular, especially if you shoot those guns pretty often. You got to check your screws regular, and especially the action screws. So the trigger screw, the bolt screw, and the hammer screw. You got to check those pretty regular. They will walk themselves back out. So that is also the advantage on the Colt is the number of parts that it has. Because if you have to work on one of those things, it's a lot easier to get into a Colt, even though it's got more parts to take apart. It's a lot easier to get in and work on a Colt than it is on a Remington. I hate working on a Remington. So that Remington that I got here, I rebuilt that. So when I bought it, and that's another one I got real cheap. I paid $100 for it. I bought it used, and it was a cowboy action gun. There actually was a pair of them there, $100 each. I couldn't swing them both, so I bought the one. And I took it home, and the nipples were seized up, and the guy shot cowboy action, so he took one nipple out, and the whole action was just rough. He'd filed the trigger and the hammer sear so that it would, you know, have a lighter trigger, and it was at the point where it would push off more times than it didn't. And so I bought a Pieta parts kit, and God bless Pieta, they make things pretty well drop in. I dropped those parts in. I've not had a problem with it since. Works great. I just need to replace the trigger bolt spring because it's pretty weak. And the parts kit that I had didn't have one of those in there. You had to buy a separate kit for springs. But anyway, yeah, so I rebuilt that, and it was a nightmare. It really was a nightmare. So the fact that the Pieta grip is together is nice on a solid frame, but it's also a pain because to take this fully apart, the main spring, you got to release the tension on this screw, try to push it out. And then you got to try to put it back in. Taking the internals out in here is not much different as a Colt. You just take the trigger guard off, pull the spring, pull the screw, trigger and the bolt fall out. But then when you pull the hammer, you have to drop it down the frame, unscrew this tiny little dinky screw to get the hand off, and then you got to pull the hammer back up through there to get it out. So I do not like working on a Remington. I really don't. It is a pain in the butt, and I hate having to do a deep clean on it because you have to mess with all that stuff, and it's just a pain in the rear end. whereas with this Colt, once I pull this all off here, everything just falls right out. I can clean it. I have it back together. I can disassemble and have a Colt back together in probably 10 minutes. Maybe less than that if I really, really rushed it. Yeah, that's kind of an advantage and disadvantage of both of them, is the simplicity and the complexity of each. All right, I'm going to go back here and read some more of the chats. Saber says the only Remington I own is a pocket model named it Noisy Cricket. Balls for it are hard to find. Yeah, those little pocket models. I thought about getting one, but they're too spendy for what they are. Chris Klein, 1860 Army, has a much better loading lever. Yeah, I'll talk on that here right quick. Shuda says I popped the loading lever off of a 58, cost me about $100 to replace it, and it was never right again. And sometimes that happens. Rick D says Pieta, Remington, New Birdie, Colts, 1851, 1860, 1862, 1863. And yeah, that's the thing on the reproductions too, is that some of these you want to be careful with what you load in them, because these Italian reproductions, sometimes the metal's not that good. Yeah, Doug. Yeah, the ratcheting or the rack and pinion. The other one is the creeping loading lever. I think that is actually what the patent calls it, is a creeping loading lever. I need to pull out Haven and Building, because they've got all the patents in the back of that. So yeah, so what we're talking about on that is right in here, you can see those little studs. Well, there's corresponding holes up in here, and so that's what they call a creeping loading lever. So before that, it was the hinged, and it's got two screws in it. One attaches it to the barrel, one is the hinge that it pivots on to load. When I went to this, there's one screw here, and then the teeth and that, just the tension keeps it all together. I mean, I can load some pretty stiff lead rounds in this if I wanted to. And you're supposed to use, pure soft lead. I found out that my best accuracy comes from a lead that's got a little bit of silver in it. And so it's just a little bit harder than your regular lead. And my Walker loves it, and this thing loves it. But it's not something you want to give a steady diet to. I use a 454 round ball mold, so I'm not shaving off a lot of lead. I'm not using the 457. That's often recommended for these, especially on the Walker. But that Walker, it will shave a little hair of lead, and boy, both of these love it. The problem is that stiff lead not only can tear up the gun, it tears up my molds too, because I get the cheap Lee aluminum molds, and that thing just chewed them up when you go to knock the sprue off. Just tears them up. All right, let's see. Carrie, hey Carrie, hadn't seen you for a while. My first cap mold, 58 Pieta, and yeah, this was my third or fourth cap and ball revolver that I'd had, and it was such a good price. I wasn't a big fan of Remington, but it was such a good price, I bought it. Let's see, Doug Dukes 18. Oh yeah, we read that one. Let's see, Richard Craig, the best of all worlds are the second generation Colts if you can find them. Love my 1860 Army and 1851 Navy and second gen. Yeah, and I've seen one of those too that wasn't that great of quality. So a buddy of mine up in Wyoming, he's got one with a square back trigger guard on it. I think it's a second gen. And that gun is the noisiest gun I ever heard, because for whatever reason, when they screwed the base pin in, they never pinned it in place. And, he's used it enough that just for living history and falling off of it enough of the horses that got loose. So the whole gun just rattles all over. But, he said he's never going to shoot it. He just bought it for the fact it was an actual Colt and for doing living history. So, howdy, James. And from South Carolina, Garza Vlogs is in. Let's see here. I think I got caught up on everything. Yeah. So yeah, kind of touched on both of those. So yeah, we've gone over, the swapping of cylinders, which, historically wasn't a thing for the Remington, was for the Colt, became a thing for the Remington and the cartridge era. I think I touched about everything I wanted to touch on there. But yeah, and we still got quite a few people. That's one of the best chats we've had for a while. All right. I was trying to think if there was anything else I was going to talk about tonight. And if you folks have any questions, feel free to chime in. This is kind of a, just a impromptu chat night. Um, so yeah, any questions you all got on there? Yeah, Serpent. Yeah, we was up there pretty high. I don't think we quite broke 30, but the thing of it is the count on here is always behind because not everybody. I think it has to do with the settings on there. James, thoughts on the Cure Bullet? I need to get the molt from our Cubs so I can test it and say. I haven't had a chance to test it yet. And every time I think about doing it, one thing or another pops up. And to be honest, I just ain't had the funds to dump into the YouTube channel. That's one of the reasons I quit doing a lot of videos, because it was getting expensive to do this stuff. It was getting really expensive. When I started filming, I was gonna try to do one video a week for a year, shooting videos. Holy crap! Um, yeah, I burnt through 2 pounds of powder in a week shooting videos on. Dang. So yeah, it got spendy fast, and that's one of the reasons why I slacked off and quit doing videos. Because then um, it was um, it was costing me to do the range. I had to pay $35 a year for an NRA membership plus $20 a year for the range membership. Um, and I was getting my use out of it. I was going on my days off, but then that was the other thing is like on my days off in the summertime, it's a daggum hot down where I'm at in southeastern Colorado. The only time you got to enjoy, and yeah, that's the dog passing gas behind me on the floor here. Um, the only time you could get to the range and enjoy it at 6 o'clock in the morning. Half the time I was half asleep, and I'd make all kinds of mistakes or forget something. And then it was also taking away. Yeah, it was Kavina. It was taking time away from my family because I'd come home and then I'd have to start editing videos, and um, yeah, I was yeah, it was getting to be too much of a pain in the butt. It was costing me in funds, it was costing me in time, and it was costing me in doing stuff with the family. So the year that I got that lever action shotgun, I did that video, and I was gonna do a bunch of whole more videos, and then I started working on a garden with my dad, and I'm like, you know what, I'd rather do that, and I'd rather go fishing with the family. So yeah, after that, I was like, screw this, do my gardening video or my gardening. I'm going to do my fishing, and I might do a video in between there. And that's why I didn't do a lot for a long time. But then this whole shorts thing come up, and I did some of the live stream stuff too there for a while. But the shorts thing come out, and it's like, and now I can start producing again and do it for fairly cheap, and do it on the live here too. But anyways, so yeah, the whole point, comparing these, I'm not really on this one. I'm not going to say one or the other is superior, especially on the reproduction market. Each of them have their benefits, their qualities when it comes to the Remingtons and the Colts. Um, and really, by the time you add up the pros of one and the cons of the other, they cancel each other out. So, but and the biggest reason why I am a Colt fan is it comes down to working on them. I can work on a Colt all day long, and a Remington, I don't like working on them. Plus, I've never had the problem with a Colt. I don't remember of a Colt dropping hot caps on my hand. That's really annoying when you're getting ready to shoot and you got a hot cap burning the palm of your hand. Oh, let's see here. Okay, Richard Craig says likely a third generation Toledo. Oh, okay, that could be. I know it was a Colt. I know it was a fairly recently done Colt, as in not an original. Rick D says typo 1860 44 cal 6136 and 6236. Yeah, and when it comes to my Colt selection of which I prefer, I am a 51 Navy fan. If I could only keep one of my black powder guns, it would be a real hard toss up between my Uberti Patterson and the 51 Navy. But I'm probably gonna go with the 51 Navy because I would never shoot the Uberti Patterson. That one's my keepsake, my one safe queen that I will never part with, because I love that gun so much, and I don't shoot it because I don't make parts for it anymore. And I've had some friends that had them, and they're notorious for breaking mainsprings because Uberti made them so close to the original specs that the parts are fragile. But I've got a Pieta Colt or a Pieta Patterson if I ever decide to shoot something Of course, shooting it might involve me putting it at 100 yards and then taking an M1 Garand and just pelting it as often as I can because I hate that particular gun. Oh, let's see. Yeah, David, it added up fast. Doug Duke says, Duke, can you or Len Bang Bang do a video on equipment it takes to do a video? Sure, I could talk about it right here. So, and this is one of the things. Most of you know that I'm friends with, Dustin Weiniger from Guns of the West and Santee from Arizona Ghost Riders, and we've all kind of got really going heavy about the same time. We all discovered each other about the same time. I think Arizona Ghost Riders, when he started watching me, he was sub 10,000 subscribers. He was only a couple thousand, and we all weren't that far off. We was all pretty close in the subscriber count. And that was about the time I decided I was going to get into this heavy. So I spent a bunch of money on a big fancy camera and a big fancy microphone. I bought not so fancy video editing software, but it was enough to get me by. I bought 2 computers, wound up, getting a refund on one of them because it didn't work, and wound up with that free and got it working for fairly cheap. But yeah, I had 2 computers. And the whole reason I bought them was to edit videos. I bought the tower that had a i5 processor in it, and that was too slow for me. So then I got the laptop that had the i7 processor, and I used that until I killed it this past summer. Yeah, I dumped a lot into it, and for what I dumped into it, I didn't get any much more success. Whereas Santee and Dustin, I think they film everything on their phones, and man, their channels blew up. So, to be honest, I don't know what the secret is for success on YouTube, but if you want to know equipment, if you got a smartphone, you're at a good start. And to be honest, if I was to do it over again, that's how I would do it. The big reason I didn't do it at that time is because I had a cheaper phone, so it was like my phone wouldn't do a lot of things that a lot of other phones would. And the phone I've got now is a lot fancier than I wanted because that's all I had at the store, and my other phone had died. I had to have a phone, so yeah, it's one of those things that if I know now what I know, or know then what I know now, I probably would have went with the phone. But give me a quick second here. I will dig out my camera. All right, and so for a while I did film with a DSLR. I had a Canon TI5, I think it was. It's a DSLR, and I had a fancy microphone for it. And I love the quality that videos that camera can produce. Oh my goodness, it can make some beautiful, beautiful footage. The thing I hate with it is a stupid autofocus. Just twerked me off. And if you wanted a real good looking shot, you had to have somebody there with manual focus, and it was just an aggravation. I just did not like it. Didn't like the complexity of it. I had to have a cameraman. Well, none of my family can really run one of those real well. So it was one of those. It was getting to be a pain in the butt. Hey, Gina. So I kind of got fed up with it, and then so I went and spent the big money and got a Canon G40. So this is a big camcorder, and the thing I love on this one is that the autofocus on a camcorder. I've never had a problem with the autofocus on camcorders. They always work real good. Big downside is this is a big brick, but I love it. I love the video it does. It does do really good quality. The biggest downside to it is I had to buy a self-powered microphone. And this microphone's so daggum long that I have to put something between it and that camera hood to lift it up so that you don't see fuzz on the camera. And then most of the times you still see fuzz in the camera. But that's the setup that I've run probably the best. I've had the best luck with. I've never had any aggravations with it, to be honest. The one thing I absolutely loved with it is it runs off of it can run off of a little remote. And so that was great, especially when I was doing like the tabletop stuff. I just sit there and hit the remote and it would start and go. The other thing I loved about it is I could plug it into the wall when I was inside, and I could record and not use up my batteries. With a DSLR, it's like, yeah, I get 30, 40 minutes of record time if I was lucky, and then I'd have to swap a battery. So I was constantly running batteries on the charger. Um, so I still have that DSLR, and I save that for when I want to take fancy pictures. It's been sitting on the gun safe for a long time because I don't have a bag for it anymore. But yeah, the camcorder for me works better. Now the 11 Bang Bang Boys, I'm not sure what camera they run, but they kind of got like your little digital small camera that has a lens that goes on it, and I know theirs is a fancier setup, and it records real well too. But for me, that's what works on that. Some people get by with the phone. 11 Bang Bang Boys, they have their camera that they like to use. The one nice thing I do love about this camcorder that I have yet to see on any other camera is the battery storage. I got an oversized battery on that, and then I've got a 128 gigabyte card. I could sit down and record for 6 hours straight as long as the battery holds up. Now, you get in cold weather and the battery doesn't last as long, but yeah, you can film for a long time on that thing. So I do like that camcorder. I like it for that. All right. Let's go back here. Yeah, Carrie. Yeah, chili dog. Yeah, funny. Carrie says, I got people asking me to do more vids on my Shiloh, and yeah, it's bloody expensive and time consuming. Paper patching 5.45 grain bullets is not quick. Yeah, I remember those days. That got old fast for me, and that's when my competition shooting with a Remington or with a Sharps went out the door. And I went and got a 6.5 Creedmoor, and I spent a bunch of money on that. And it's sitting in the safe. The reloading stuff's sitting in the back. If I could find hunting bullets to load with it, I would go load it for hunting. But yeah, that 6.5 is getting to be a safe queen. And I've thought about swapping it out for a 300 Win Mag or a 30-06, but I don't know. I just can't give it up yet. I think I'm going to try to get a deer with it this year, though. Yeah, Serpent. I know. Yeah, Mike had some issues with his Remington, and people that say that Remingtons don't camp jam or don't camp jam that bad. The second worst cap jam I've ever had was on that Remington. Now, the first worst one I had was on my second model Dragoon, and that cap fell back down in, and when it did, it wedged itself between the hammer and the bolt, and it locked that gun solid. And I had to take it apart to get it out of there. Once it got out, it was fine. But this thing, so what happened is when that cap jammed, it was on the last round, and I went to cock to clear it, and somehow that cap managed to get between the back of the cylinder and the face of the frame in there and locked it up tight. And I had it at half cock when it did that, and I managed to get the base pin out, and it was jammed. And I took it over to the table on the loading bench. And at this point, I'm pretty well ticked off with this gun because I was not having good luck with it all day. I had hot caps all over my hands. And so I just went over to the edge of the table and I gave it a full, Lou Gehrig gonna knock a home run. And the cylinder went flying about 10 feet. But that thing was locked. It was a good thing I didn't have access to a pipe wrench because I probably would have used that to try to turn the cylinder and marred it up. But yeah. And I think you can still see the little dent where it hit the table. That's how hard I hit it, as the wood dented the metal. Maybe why my shoulder's messed up too. All right, let's see. Carrie says YouTube wants consistent publishing, 10, 20-minute vids, so it keeps the short attention span, people watching and seeing ads. Yeah, and now they're kind of moving away towards the shorts. That's what's getting my long format videos are just going downhill. The ones that I did out in Kansas with the Bang Bang Boys, none of them have broke 600 views yet that I know of. Garrett did one where he edited me fighting the Blue Ducks gang. That one's sitting at about 550. The main Henry video is sitting about 550. The M1 Grand video hasn't even broke 400. I figured that one would blow up. It didn't. And ever since they monetized the shorts, my shorts haven't been doing all that well. All the ones I did bashing the Remingtons today did pretty well. That one where I used it for a bottle opener, that one shot up real fast. And to be all honest, I didn't know that the Remington would do that. I was just sitting there looking at that hammer, and I seen that bottle after I'd opened. I was like, dang, this can make a bottle opener. And so I went over to my mom's and grabbed one of her root beers, and because the store didn't have any more Cokes in, and I don't drink Dr. Pepper at all. Stuff's nasty. But anyway, and so I figured it was going to fail at doing that. It would slip off there, and I'm like, well, I'll just, something else to bash it on. And no, popped it right off. I was impressed. But yeah, I had fun bashing the Remingtons, but they are good guns. They will shoot. It's just that, historically they weren't as fancy as everybody says. And that's one thing that's been aggravating me here lately is like when people say in a historical sense, oh, it was better in the Civil War because soldiers could swap cylinders. If you don't know history, don't make up BS, okay? If you ain't got it to back it up, don't say it. Now, if you want to talk about, yeah, you can swap cylinders easier than you can on a modern reproduction, you're absolutely correct. With a couple of exceptions. All right. Garza, yeah, I'm the director, publisher, assistant cameraman, talent, and I also sweep the place out. Yeah, Garrett, I forgot. That's why I called you earlier. I forgot you guys were filming. Gina Woods, you need a wife to help you? No, although I thought I was going to be able to have my friend Caroline help me do filming this summer. I was thinking about trying to do some long form videos and shooting, and I was going to have her help me because she's pretty tech savvy and she could run camera pretty good. But she got a job over in Illinois. I'm not going to say where. Those of you are close with me know where she got it at, but I don't want everybody bothering her where she's at because it's for a gun person. It's a dream job. But yeah, so that messed up my plan. So I'm going to be still the only one running this thing. Oh, let's see. David Squall's out in Off, Virginia. No, she's married. That's Garrett's mom from over 11 Bang Bang. Well, it's the whole 11 Bang Bang's mom. Let's see. West Covina, I love paper patching almost as fun as casting. You know what? I can sit and cast bullets all day. I cannot stand paper patching. It just drives me nuts, especially cutting those little things out. Cool Hand says, hey, Duke, can answer the question right now. Colt. Rock McLaughlin says, how much more powder will Dragoon hold for hunting? So with the Dragoon, Colt designed it where it'll take 50 grains max with a round ball. Now with a conical, you're looking closer to 40. And if you get the Arrows Gone original Sugarloaf bullet that was made for the Dragoons, 40 is going to be a very tight fit. I can tell you right now. I had to shave the nose off of one bullet trying to load 40 grains in that gun. So you're not looking at a lot of powder, but you do have a hell of a lot heavier bullet, and I guess we're the uncensored version tonight because I'm getting tired. So, you got a heck of a lot more bullet there. You're equal in a Kaido Ojama bullet in weight. It's just that Kaido's bullets are more stubby and more like a square cylinder than a cone. And so you can get a heavier bullet with his and get a little more powder because it sets deeper. But anyway, so yeah, Dragoon can hold quite a bit of powder. Now Walker, yeah, you can load 60 grains in a Walker and shoot it all day. The thing of it is that's too much powder for that gun. And what happens is that wedge just gets destroyed if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, it's the slot on the barrel that gets destroyed along with the wedge, and then eventually you get so much headspace in there, or I should say cylinder gap, that you have to replace both the barrel and the wedge, and it gets pretty spendy. So 50 grains in a Walker is max. 40 grains is about max in a Dragoon. I mean, you can push 50 with a round ball, and you're not gonna hurt it that much. But yeah, if you're talking like hog hunting, oh yeah, that Dragoon will get it done if you're close enough. For 1860 Army, I know Kaido Ojama with his bullets. He's taking hogs with him. He likes the Remington. Kaido likes them all. I think he's done some stuff with the Remington, but Kaido put a Picatinny rail on a Walker and mounted a red dot sight to it. So he's all for the modernization and modern hunting with the black powder guns. Unfortunately, where I live, you can't hunt with them. It's not legal, especially in big game season. Now, I haven't quite gotten a straight answer in small game season, because I asked a game warden about it because there is caliber restrictions on some hunting here in the state, and I asked him. I said, "Well, is it okay to hunt squirrels with a 45 caliber muzzleloader?" And he says, "Well, he didn't see a problem with it, but well, I could just patch it down to a 32." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but by the time I get enough patching in there, it's like I'm not going to be engaging rifling, and I'm not going to get any accuracy out of it." But he wasn't quite clear on whether or not you could use a cap and ball 6-shooter for small game hunting, but he was very adamant that you couldn't use it for big game in the state. So one of those things, you always check your laws before you go hunting. Now, if you're in Texas hog hunting, it's free game down there. Let's see here. See, Garrett, the interesting history is with the Colt. Yeah. Yeah, and Remington history, I mean, for the Civil War, it's not that great. I mean, if it wasn't for the Colt factory burning down, I don't think Remington would have been able to sell as many revolvers as they had. But once that Colt factory burnt down, I mean, they were the next best choice. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Star double action. The Star's fine gun. I just don't like the fact that one you definitely have a moving sight on. And the Rogers and Spencers, for anybody says that they were a really good Civil War gun, they're a good Civil War era gun, but they weren't used in the Civil War. They were loaded up, put in a box, and for whatever reason, the government didn't issue them. But when you start getting post-Civil War, then the Remington history gets really interesting. And when I bash the Remington new model Army, don't take that as I'm bashing the company, because Remington made some good stuff. The Remington rolling block rifle, that should have got the Army contract over the Springfield trapdoor. And so the three that competed was the Sharps, the rolling block, and the trap 9. And if I remember right, the main reason why the trapdoor got it was it could be shot from the prone and reloaded easily, whereas the Sharps, it's kind of hard to drop that lever in the prone and load. And the Remington was good in the prone position. However, on that Remington, to load it, you got to be at full cock. And the Springfield, you go to half cock and then you can load it. And so I think that was probably what killed Remington with the Army contract in the U.S. But the thing that saved Remington is it got foreign contracts like crazy. That's why you got such these oddball calibers like the 43 Egyptian, the 43 Argentine, whatever, 43 Spanish. You got all kinds of, and I know I probably didn't get half those calibers right, but I'm just using that as an example. So yeah, and the one that I shot was in 43 Spanish, I think it is. And that's pretty close to Sharp's 4477, which was one of the most popular buffalo hunting calibers. And I can tell you that is a hard hitting caliber. But yeah, Remington made great rifles. Remington Keen rifle, that was a good one. I think, the Keen, the bolt action. And if you've ever watched Crossfire Trail, that's what the one bad guy Bo Doran has. So they made some good guns. It's just that I don't think their marketing was all that great after the Civil War. Didn't have very good marketing. But when it comes to handguns, Remington's not had a good track record. And the only good Remington handgun is a copy of a Colt design in 1911. But yeah, I mean, the 1875 Remington, it's basically a single action Army with a little bit different grip profile and a web, and then the different ejection port. But otherwise, that's pretty much a Colt too. So yeah, Remington handguns weren't that great. And modern Remingtons, I really love those too. Remington 870, can't beat it. All right, let's see here. Chris Klein says, how about a live chat on Tom Tobin? I tell you what, that was the other thing I was going to bring up tonight. This coming weekend on Saturday is the first stream of Tales of the Trails, and I got to sit down and start reading books like crazy because I think we're going to do the 1874 Indian Wars, or do the Southern Plains Indian Wars. I'm not going to say the specific one, but we're going to do the Southern Plains Indian Wars. We're going to get into that, what was going on down here. We've touched with Garrett on 11 Bang Bang on the Northern Plains Indian Wars, and due to a fiasco I'm not going to get into, we're going to have to redo all that again, but I thought we should tie in to the Southern Plains Indian Wars because they really do kind of tie together at one central point that's not too far from where I live. So yeah, that chat is called Tales of the Trails, And the first stream on there is going to be on both this channel and Garrett's channel. And the reason for that is just to kind of get it more advertised, so we draw more attention to it, because I figure Garrett and I share probably at least 75% of the same people on subscribers. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, I don't know. But we're both at about 8,000. And so that way we can draw attention to it from both sides. And then after that, they will be here every other week on this channel only, I think is the original plan that we discussed. And so that's going to go until about April. And then in April, I don't know what's going to happen, because I'm going to be moving back to Wyoming, starting the job back up. And depending on what my schedule is, I may be working late shift Saturday night, so that may go down the drain. We'll have to readjust. But for the, or I shouldn't say the month, month of April, we won't be doing, it would be the month of March. We're going to try to do them every other weekend. I think we got 2 scheduled in March and 1 coming up this weekend. So that will be Saturday night. Just noticed I had a hair sticking out of my nose. That'll be on Saturday night at 7:30 my time, which is Mountain Time. So 8:30 Central, 9:30 Pacific. I know that's late for some, but that's kind of the best time that works for me and Garrett both. But that will be coming up, and we will be doing that. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we're going to do the Southern Plains Indian Wars. Then we'll touch back on the Northern Plains and stuff. But yeah, I'll try to touch on Tom Tobin. That'll get me inclined to read that book again. It's been a while since I read it, but yeah, Tom Tobin was an interesting guy. Not somebody I would want chasing me around. Let's see. 11 Bang Bangs in. 11 Bang Bang, the things you aren't supposed to discuss in public, religion, politics, and why the Colt 1860 Army was better than the Remington Model Army. Oh, boy. 11 Bang Bang's really going to try to get things heated. I was going to try to be unbiased on this one, but I think it's really going to go. And yeah, and he also says that's coming from a Smith & Wesson fanboy, so that's Ethan, and Ethan is big on the Smithies. And I mean, Smith & Wesson, they came out with an okay design early on, and I do like the new model, the first model American. I do really like that gun. I've handled the reproduction, and I know internally it's a Schofield, but externally, that grip that is pretty well similar to the originals. Boy, I can run that. So that is one of the open tops I would love. But I've shot the Schofield, just not impressed with it. And when I grab the grip, it's like I'm shooting 1,000 yards away. I mean, that barrel's sitting like that. So I'm just not a fan of the Schofield. Plus, never fails, I would probably be one of the few lucky ones. If I was issued a Schofield in the U.S. Cav in the 1870s, I'd probably be one of the guys that reach in, pull his gun out, and the freaking barrel would drop down. The bullets go flying everywhere. All right. Cool Hand says 1860 Army was a better balanced gun and preferred by troops. Yeah, that is documented, and there's several. The 11 Bang Bang boys have a great source on that, and I forget who it was, but I think it was down in Arizona, and the Army sent him Remingtons. He wrote back to the Army, and he says, "You take these dadgum things back. I want my Colts." And that's well noted across. The soldiers loved the Colts. But Sam Colt and the Army Ordnance Board were constantly in a pissing match with each other. And so Colt didn't get a lot of the contracts early on, which is why Colt sold a lot of guns to the Confederacy. Not that he was a Southern sympathizer. Colt was a profiteer. And as long as he's making a profit, he didn't care who he sold to. He did sell to the Texas Rangers as well, but that one he did put the stipulation on that they couldn't be used against Northern troops. And so that's how and about half of the ones that they ordered, he did get delivered through the blockade. They're commonly known as McCulloch Colts, which were the early full fluted cylinders. But yeah, Colt was definitely, he didn't care who he sold to, as long as he made a profit. And it's one thing I do admire about Colt. Not only was he a great invented a lot of things. He was a very astute businessman. And if you wanted the best way to describe it is that I can, bring it to modern terms is watch Star Wars. He's basically a Ferengi. All right, Soylent Green. Yeah, the Sharps is the only one more famous than the Rolling Block because the Burden Sharp shooters and Quigley Down Under in 1874. He isn't even the best model. Rolling Blocks probably killed more buffalo. Um, yeah, Soylent, it was definitely between the two. Now, if you look at photographs of buffalo hunters, like you see a lot more Sharps. To be honest, in fact, I don't remember seeing a Rolling Block in a photograph. Not that I can remember off the top of my head. But I know they were used out there. They were definitely, if you know, I don't know if they were more prevalent than the Sharps, but they were definitely out there as many as the Sharps, if not a few less. But yeah, between them and the Sharps, that's what killed a lot of the buffalo. I ain't gonna say it killed all the buffalo because there's a lot of disease that also played into that too. And that's one thing, I mention to folks when I'm doing my talks, when I'm at work, is that the demise of the buffalo wasn't just that 10 or 20 year period in the late 60s to the 80s. The demise of the buffalo really gets started clear back in earnest in the 1830s, late 1830s. And that's when the buffalo robe trade starts to pick up, and they start sending buffalo robes to Europe and stuff. They're a novelty item. Everybody's got to have them. People were making coats, lap blankets and such, gloves, mittens, hats. That's where it started. And it wasn't the white hunters that were doing it. It was the white traders that were telling the Indians, hey, if you go out and kill all these buffalo and tan the hides and bring them to us, we'll give you finished goods. We'll give you guns. We'll give you coffee. We'll give you sugar. We'll give you all these trade items. And that's what really starts the demise. And most of the natives didn't catch on right away. But it didn't take them long to catch on what was going on. In fact, in 1842, just a few years after Bent's Fort down here really gets started into the buffalo robe trade. They have what's known as the Great Starvation Winter because there's so much pressure put on the buffalo in that area that they pick off and move to the east over in the Pawnee territory, and the Cheyenne around here couldn't find any buffalo. And so in 1840, Bent's had their best year of about 15,000 buffalo robes sent back east. Well, you get into 1842 and they send 2,000 buffalo robes. And they don't do any better than that for quite a few years. So there was that going on, and the same thing is true up at Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie is kind of at that point where, south of there, the buffalo went east, north of there, the buffalo went west. And the buffalo moving west up there is what's going to lead to problems during the 1860s. Why the Lakota wanted to have that territory in the Powder River area, and they were fighting the Crow Fort because all the buffalo had moved in there, and that was the best buffalo hunting country in the west at that time. But yeah, so that gets started, demising the buffalo, and then you get started with, at the trading posts, the white hunters hunting to supply meat for that and leaving a lot to rot. And then one day, J.W. Moore and his brother J.W. Moore, there was John Wright and John Wesley, it was J. Wright and J. Wesley Moore. I can't remember which one was which on the J, but anyway, the Moore brothers come out, decide to shoot a few buffalo, send the hides back east, make some money out, so they come out and start shooting. Next thing you know, it's like a mini gold rush. And that takes a big number. About that same time, you have cattle starting to really come in, and cattle bring in diseases like brucellosis and tick fever. And brucellosis is one of the reasons why modern ranchers don't want buffalo anywhere near their herds. It's not one that kills the animal, but it sterilizes it to where it can't ever reproduce. And so brucellosis comes in. That's gonna make a herd sterile in a short time. The bulls spread it, and then the cows never have a viable calf after that. And then tick fever hits a herd, and they're just dead within a few days. And I think it was Buffalo Bill Cody talked about in one of his accounts where he was riding across the plains and come across thousands of buffalo dead. Nobody'd shot them; they'd not been skinned. So disease did a number on it too. So there was a lot of factors. Anyway, digressed into something else. But yeah, the Remington rolling block, definitely a good one. Let's see here. Yeah, Garrett. Yeah, the Army did use a few Remingtons from 1870 to 73 on the trapdoors. They did use, and that was kind of a testing period. So in 1870 is when the Army starts to think about re-outfitting the military with guns, going to new guns. So in 1870, the cavalry is going to be issued the 1870 trapdoor carbine, which is a 50-70. and I think it's about 1,000 or 2,000 of those that go out. Um, there's about 1,000 Remingtons that are going to go out and be used in field trials. Then in 71, they're going to start looking at handguns. And 72 is when 71 is when Colt re-outfits, converts a lot of the Cap and Ball 1860 Armies to cartridge. 1872, they're going to submit the open top design. The Army's going to test that and basically say, we want something that's a little stouter and more powerful. And in 1873, Colt's going to submit the single action Army. And there is a very rare, I've seen it, I don't remember where I saw that, very rare rimfire single action Army in 44 Henry. So they were even playing around with that design before the Army sent it back and said, we want one with the top strap. So Colt was messing around with a lot. Okay, we've been going for an hour, which is longer than I ever intended for this one to go. So I am going to read through the chats here and kind of start to shut this thing down. So Wes Cavina says, well, I got an 1858 from an X44. Do you guys recommend an 1860 or a Walker just for fun? That Walker is fun, but man, it sucks up the powder, and it's a bear. And some of the modern ones, the newer ones, I should say, some of the newer ones have weaker springs and they're more prone to cap jams. But I've also noticed on the newer ones, the loading levers stay up better, so it's a trade-off. But 1860 Army, I mean, they're fun too. They don't shoot up a lot of powder. Not a real big boom. The Walker's got quite a big boom to it. But yeah, either one of them. You'll spend less on the 1860 Army too. They're a little cheaper, but and you can also put a shoulder stock on the 1860 Army. Gina Wood says, looking forward to the Southern Plains Indians. Yeah, I need to read up on it. I need to read a lot of books here in the next few days. I need to read up on Sand Creek, Washita, or Buffalo War. This may be one of those that I get to Washita and we're 4 hours in. Let's see. Soylent love to see a Smith & Wesson's design on Captain Ball gun in 36 and 44. They didn't have the rolling white patent. Yeah, that would be interesting. But that's one thing I'll give credit to Smith & Wesson. They took an idea for a self-contained cartridge, and they dominated the market for a short time. And why they didn't put out something more potent than a little 22 and the 32s that they did, I don't know why. But they waited the last minute to start putting in the 44 big boys, and didn't work out as well for them. But Smith & Wesson also still dominates the revolver market today, too. So I guess they just hold out, and they do well. Let's see. Chris Klein says, I own both. In my opinion, 1860 Army is just better even in the reproduction. And the biggest reason, and I wanted to love the Remington so much for a long time, but the biggest reason for me is it just wraps my knuckle. It's not even fun to shoot. I really don't enjoy shooting the 1858. I'm going to have to find a drink of water here pretty quick because I've been talking for an hour. Yeah, Carrie. Yeah, Carrie's got a point. It's 4.5 pound gun, but I mean, it's fun to shoot. It's just a bear. Cool Hand said, I would enjoy seeing a shooting contest between Sharps and the rolling block, which reloaded the quickest. I think it's going to be a toss up on that one because every one of them, you're going to have to bring it back to, you're going to have to manipulate the hammer. On the Sharps, you got to drop that lever. The rolling block, you got to pull the thing back, and then you got to reach up and pull it out. I think the Sharps would have probably a slight advantage because that Sharps has got a pretty strong ejector on it. And original Sharps do. Now, the Pedersoli reproductions, you push them, and then you got to push that lever down to get it to kind of back out a little bit, and then you flip it out. But on original that I handled, you push that thing down, and that ejector comes flying back. It'll kick a cartridge out real good. And it's kind of like the reproduction Springfield Trappers. The ejectors suck on them. On the originals, I mean, those things are pretty stout. But on the reproductions of Pedersolis, they are not that great of an injector. Let's see. Tan's 1860 just plain looks better. It does. It does have beautiful lines. Wes Cavina says, yeah, I guess everybody recommends 1860. Yeah. And like I said, I got 2 Walkers sitting in the safe. I love them to death. but they are a bear to shoot. Yep, silent. Let's see. Carrier. Keep in mind, I own 2 walkers, so for a walker owner to recommend something else means something. Yeah, it's and um to be honest, my favorite of the big horse pistol guns is actually the Whitneyville Dragoon. The Uberti reproduction of that. It's got a Walker grip on it and a Dragoon barrel. And that gun, I love it because I love the Walker grip. It fits my hand perfect on the Ubertis. Now, I handled a Colt reproduction one, an actual Colt that Garrett had, whatever model that was. And that grip, it just wasn't as comfortable. But the grips on these, I just love them. And that Whitneyville Dragoon is just that happy balance of barrel length, weight, and yeah, I just love it. Absolutely love it. But you know, my walkers are fun. It's just that yeah, they're a bear, and they shoot up a lot of powder, and that's one of the big reasons I don't shoot them a lot is just because it's shooting twice. If you load it full, it's shooting. Well, even with a 50 grain charge, it's still shooting about because I shoot about 25 grains out of my 60 Army, shooting twice the powder. So you go through that twice as fast. Captain Crunch says Colt always loses a battle doing to have to pop the wedge. Well, like I was saying earlier, on this one you got to drop the loading lever. Move that forward. So popping the wedge for me is not that big of an issue. And like I said, the modern reproductions, a lot of the wedges are in real bad, you know, I shouldn't say real bad shape. They're way too tight. This one actually has a wedge that's about right. So I can pop that wedge and have that barrel off. And I can actually swap a cylinder on this 51 Navy faster than I can a Remington. Just a hair faster. Now, I did do a video on, and if you look on my videos, I did do a video where I swapped the cylinders on this one and the other one, or on the Remington, and on that one, they came out about the same time. The only disadvantage, you get 2 parts, but if you learn how to hold them right, it's not an issue. But the biggest disadvantage, and this is one that I was going to mention earlier, and I forgot to do it, and I'm glad Garrett commented in there about taking the barrel off, is when it comes to a catastrophic failure. So, everybody says that the Remington has an advantage over the Colt because that top strap makes it stronger. Well, here's the thing. A lot of times when you see catastrophic failures from back in the day on the Colts, they blow the cylinder, they'll blow part of the barrel. Snappers Antique Firearms recently got an original Colt 1860 Army that had the cylinder blown. And usually what happens is it blows at the back, right in the notch for the cylinder stop, and flips it forward. But on his, the back of the barrel had also come up and off. So what that, to me, told me is he had a squib load. So what happened is, get the 1860 Army Airsoft, what happened is the bullet had got about this far down. The next round fired, and that bullet hit, blew this out. The back pressure blew out the cylinder. And so that pretty well finished that barrel and cylinder. Here's the advantage of the Colt. When you have a catastrophic failure like that, you take off the barrel, you take off the cylinder, you put on a new barrel, new cylinder, your gun's functional again. The same catastrophic failure and completely destroy it. So if the bullet gets down here and blows out the barrel, most of the times when you see them blown, there's quite often a split down the barrel, just splits it right in half down the middle. And I mean, it's not a banana peel split. It's just, you'll see a noticeable crack from wherever that round was setting that goes out the end of the barrel. But say, for instance, it gets stuck here, and then you fire the next round, you got your squib. You're going to blow your cylinder, probably going to blow the top of the frame, if not swell it, and you're going to split the frame right in here. It's pretty much guaranteed. You're going to split it in here somewhere. And so with a catastrophic failure like that on this gun is finished. It will never be functional again. It'll be sent to whatever people are making metal, melt it down, and if it's lucky, it wind up back at the Remington factory and start life over again. Um, so yeah, that's the one main disadvantage to this is that a catastrophic failure, the gun's done forever. Probably not going to come back from it. Unless it's further down the barrel. Then you can unscrew the barrel and put a new barrel on. But anything back in here, or if that cylinder blows for whatever reason, the gun's done. It's going to be done forever. So that is a clear advantage over the Colt. And so that's where I said, the number of parts compared to Remington to Colt is that it's a disadvantage in some regards and an advantage in others. So with the Remington, less parts, solid frame. If it blows, it's a disadvantage. Whereas a Colt, if it blows, the extra parts is an advantage. Cool hand. Yeah, I love the 51 Navy grip. Just love it. And that's why I went back to that grip profile for the 73 single action. But yeah, the 60 Army grip, I'm just not as big of a fan of. Big as a fan of. I need to get a drink here because I'm going to start flipping my words. Give me one quick second, and then I'll grab a drink, and then we're going to close this out. This has actually been a really good chat here tonight for just doing it for fun on the phone. Let's see. Trapper Paul, Colt versus Remington Stream, LOL. Yep. And we had a lot of extra history in there too. So do you like the 1860 Army or 5161 Navy grip better? And I guess versus Remington as well. I do like the 51 Navy grip. So it's my favorite grip. And I don't think it's that much different on the 61 Navy. Yeah, the 60 Army grip is just, I don't like it. It's too long, too thin up on top. But keep in mind, I'm bearing this on the original design or on the reproduction design. In the originals, the grip profiles were a little bit different. In fact, I tried to copy a Colt Wasp body grip. And if you get the book, 51 Navies by Nathan Swayze, it gets into the nitty-gritty details of everything on Navies. But basically what it comes down to is the grips that you see today are a little bit thicker than what they were originally. But I do really like that 51 Navy grip. I really do. And on the Remington grip, I mean, what it comes down to that I don't like on it is right there. You can see that trigger guard is rubbing my knuckle. It's not even fun to hold it. And I think Mike Bellevue went on his and he took some metal out of his to make his more comfortable. But by the time I grip it to where that's not a problem and I take aim, I'm holding to the left of the target considerably. So yeah, for me to be square on the gun there, it rides right on my middle finger knuckle and it just drives me nuts. And when you shoot a real stout charge, like I loaded up 35 grains in this one day just to see what it could do, that is not fun at all. And that was one of the reasons why I bought the Uberti. Because everybody said, oh, the Uberti grip is better on the Remington. And I can tell you right now, the overall construction of the gun for Uberti is better than Pieta. A lot better. The grip profile, it made no difference. And that gun had issues. But Garrett, they got it to work pretty good. So I'm glad it's got a good home. Captain Crunch, my adult beverage tonight is good old Coca-Cola. I'm so addicted to this stuff. Oh, geez. If we had the zombie apocalypse tomorrow, I'd be like that guy that goes around after the Twinkies, only I'd be after Coca-Cola. Although I might be chasing the Twinkies too, because I'm a Twinkie nut. I haven't had one for about a year, and I'm surprised I haven't went into withdrawals yet and died. Oh, let's see. Let's see. Captain Crunch says 1860 snub-nose pocket is the one he would like. Oh, you talking about that Avenging Angel? Those are nice. I'd like to have one, but I just can't justify buying it. Diane, you reminded me of the other thing I was going to talk about, which was cap jams. I think I did. Yeah, I did talk about it. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. So we're going to go here for another 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to shut it down. But anyway, So historically, cap jams weren't an issue because there were caps that worked in Colts and there were caps that worked in Remingtons. And the caps that worked in Remingtons, when fired in Remington, the Remington functioned fine. And the whatever time it is, train's coming through. And the caps that were used in Colts, when used in Colts, functioned fine, and they didn't cap jam. And I've talked about that in my video, Cap Jams in History. Back in the day, there were caps that were different thicknesses for different uses. And the military did testing to find out, what caps worked the best, and they found out pretty quick. Colts like the double waterproof, the Ely double waterproof caps. And I thought double waterproof means they went to a little extra to waterproof them, and I'm thinking now that the double means double thick because they're about twice the thickness of the other caps of the day. So they're a very heavy cap. They're twice the thickness of today's modern caps. The Remingtons used just regular Ely caps or whatever caps they had. And so the Army did the testing, and they found out that when you put the Ely caps for the Colts, the double waterproofs in the Remington, they would jam a Remington because they're so thick they'd swell back and they'd lock up the action. When you put the regular caps on the Colt, the hammer would blow that cap apart so much that the cap would fall into the action and lock it up. So it happened back in the day. And the alleviation was you use the right caps with the right gun. So modern days, they're all using the light, thinner caps because everybody's making them cheaper so everybody can buy. Personally, I wish one of these companies would start making a double thickness cap. I'd pay the extra, I'd pay the double cost at the end for these Colts, and I think the cap jam issue would completely disappear. Because with that double thickness cap, it's not going to blow up like the smaller ones does. It's going to stay on that cone, the nipple we call it now, a lot better, and then it's not going to jam up in the action. It'll act like it's supposed to act. So yeah, that's where it comes down to is historically cap jams were an issue. It's a modern day, well, I mean it was an issue, but it's definitely more of an issue modern day than it was back then. You just had to make sure you use the right things. Let's see. Soylent says in southern New Jersey there's a drink called Boost, basically flat Coca-Cola with more sugar. People are addicted to it, and the whole town is known for. Cool Hand says, have any more holster videos planned? Yeah, at some point here. I'm going to be ordering leather here soonish, I hope. And I'm hoping I can order enough leather that I can start working on a pair of saddlebags, historic saddlebags of the 1874 pattern. I have the pattern for it. I've got part of it made. But I'm going to do a video on vinegaroon because I've made some of that stuff, and boy, is it worked nice. Boy, I have not gotten such an even dye on there that's a black dye. And the nice thing is, it doesn't rub off after you get done spraying it. That's one thing I hate about the Fibings dye is that black, no matter, well, it's not just Fibing, anybody, the black dye for leather, that black just rubs off on everything. So, yeah, this stuff doesn't. But then the trade-off is I have to put in a little more work because after you put the vinegaroon on it, you really got to soak it in baking soda water to neutralize that acid because there's still some acid in there that's active, and I even loaded it up with extra steel wool to try to make sure it was neutralized. It still reacts with baking soda, so you got to soak it in there to neutralize that. Otherwise, if you do that on a holster and dip dye it, that acid's going to be on your gun all the time. All right, I'm going to have to sit down here as my feet are saying I can't stand any longer. So I'm going to grab the phone here. Try not to show too much of my dirty house. All right. And then we're going to get close to finishing it off here and see how much my phone's got plenty of juice. All right. Yeah, Remington number 10s are hard to find. Captain Crunch. CCIs you'll come across here. I know Dustin Weiniger gets lucky every so often, and he finds a bunch of CCIs. Somebody told me that RWS caps were being found, but I'm sitting on. Well, I think I gave about 300 caps to 11 Bang Bang Boys. Okay, woo, we're back. I forgot when I sit down behind this one wall, I lose cell phone service, so I'm standing up high, where I was, I can run it off cell phone, but when I'm sitting down, I got to run it off the Wi-Fi. Let's see. Yeah, Soylent Slick Shots makes a big difference. Also, polishing the hammer face on my 1860 Uberti. I polished the hammer face, and my cap jam issues pretty well dissolved away. But that Pieta 1860, that was a cap jamming SOB I had ever seen, and I put Slick Shots on it, and problem went away. I ordered Slick Shots for the 49 pocket because that little sucker, it's not cap sucking. The caps are just getting blown back under the hammer because the hammer spring's so weak. But I haven't put those in it yet to try it out. I need to. I haven't shot that for a while. All right. Yeah, Franklin, I think we got it figured out here. Yeah. Yeah, the signal kind of died there. Like I said, what happened is I sit down in my chair and I got just low enough that I couldn't pick up the cell phone tower anymore. It's amazing what about 18 inches of difference it makes. All right. So anyway, we're going to start finishing up here. If you got any last minute questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and throw them in down there. But yeah, whole point of this one wasn't really to bash the Remington. I've done that enough on the shorts. Just kind of an honest comparison between the two, and kind of why I prefer the Colts over the Remingtons. But at the end of the day, if you had to make me choose between a Remington and a Star Double Action, I would take the Remington. Definitely. And if you had me choose between a Remington and a Smith & Wesson, whatever caliber the Army one was, I think I'd still take the Remington. And Remington, Roger & Spencer, I think I'd still take the Remington there too, because I handled an original Roger & Spencer. That thing has got such a long way to travel to hit that hammer. It's like Garrett was telling me, it's like you got to have a step ladder to shoot it. You get on your step ladder, cock it, jump off the step ladder, shoot it, jump on your step ladder, cock it again, jump off the step ladder, shoot it. Just, yeah, that one is a, if they put that spur, swept the spur back a little bit better, I might have bought that was a better gun. So I haven't honestly handled a Star Single, so I can't speak for it. But if it's still fairly similar to the Double Action, then I'm probably going to still go with a Remington. But when you get into the cartridge era, you know, a Remington, I think I'd still take the Colt conversion, because the Remington conversion, he's still just wrapping your knuckles. Now, I did handle a 1875 Remington, and that one wasn't bad. It was heavy, but it wasn't bad. That was comfortable grip on it. But yeah, like I said, with that web underneath there, it was a heavy gun. I think they left that under there so Colt wouldn't throw so much of a fit. Yeah, just, I don't know. Remington's not had a good track record with handguns. And that's kind of throughout their entire history. They've had a good track record with rifles, and they have a really good track record with shotguns. And you know, I love my Remington 870 that I may or may not be given to a friend of mine. Depends on whether or not she wants to take it when she moves, because her shotgun's not very good. But yeah, Remington Company's all right. Just their handguns ain't that great, and our new model Army's one of those. All right, so we've been going for about an hour and a half here. Yeah, God, Soylent. Yeah, I remember when that R51 come out. Um, Woo wee, how they left the factory. I don't know what Remington was thinking. Of course, it wasn't really Remington's not Remington really anymore. It's kind of like Colt's been bounced around. So I don't know who owns Remington now, but I think it's changed hands at least 2 times since I've started YouTube. Because, yeah, the guys that were getting the R51s, they'd send them back to the factory to get fixed, and Remington would send them a 1911 instead. Yeah, Franklin, I do like Mossberg action. I really do. I've got one in the Shockwave. I love it. Um, but I took that Remington up. I bought it. I really bought it for my friend to hunt with because she didn't have a shotgun at the time. And bought it for her, and she used it, and she's real good with it. But the thing on it, the wood is just absolutely beautiful. But it does have a little bit of an issue. It's got a burr or something in there. A guy told me how to fix it. It's an easy fix, but it likes to jam and not eject shells. So I got to fix that on it. But like it said, the guy said it wouldn't be that big of an issue. He says there's a burr in there where they just they didn't do a very good job milling out the barrel. But anyway, yeah, I love that 870. I won't get rid of it. I love that Mossberg. And if given the opportunity to find a Mossberg for a relatively cheap price, I would probably buy a Mossberg because the greatest strength of the Mossberg is that safety up on top. It's ambidextrous. Thing with my friend Caroline is she's right-hand dominant, but she's left-eye dominant. But she shoots left-handed, so yeah. Sometimes she kind of forgets which way the safety goes, and she's got a left-handed shotgun, but that thing hasn't worked real well for this last waterfowl season. So she went back to using the Remington, and yeah, it's a great gun. She's done well with it. I've done well with it. I killed quite a few ducks this year with it. I killed my first widgeon with it, and my first teals, and man, I got a lot of first-time duck. Well, I thought about having them mounted, but they just weren't that great of plumage. But yeah, I've done pretty well with that Remington. Not going to complain. Now, I've got a Winchester pump action in the safe that I don't hunt with anymore. The only reason I still got it is my uncle gave it to me. But that gun, I don't know what his problem is. It shoots low and left. So when the first time I went turkey hunting, I went to shoot at a tom, and I was shooting through some bushes, and I probably shouldn't have took that shot, but yeah, the tom, I guess, took a step about the time I got ready to shoot, and I hit the hen behind it, and I was aiming. Well, they're both their necks were lined up. If I would have shot before he stepped, I probably would have wound up with them both and been in trouble. But when I hit her, it hit low and left. I aimed right at the back of her head, and I clipped her right where her neck comes to her body. And then my dad shot his turkey with it that same day. He aimed at her head, and he hit her right in the middle of the back. So yeah, that Winchester's just not that. It's just not very accurate. And I took a duck hunt, and I killed 2 ducks. Killed 2 ducks with it. And that's it. That's all I've killed with it. So yeah. And I've taken it quail hunting. I've taken it dove hunting. I've never hit anything, but my semi-auto, my TriStar, and everybody gives me crap because I got a TriStar. I've killed more stuff with that TriStar than you can shake a stick at. I love that shotgun. So for semi-auto, I love my TriStar, and for pump action, I love my Remington. Okay, yeah, I've been going for a lot longer here. Let's see, we need to finish this up. Yeah, Captain Crunch, glad to have you on. Yeah, be sure to check us out. I think next Saturday, yeah, just a final reminder, next Saturday we're doing the Tales of the Trail history stream. It's going to be 7:30. It'll be here and on 11 Bang Bang. But after that, it's going to be on this channel. Even though Garrett's still going to be hosting it, just because we kind of got it set up. He's a channel moderator. I need to get over and talk with him about that too and get things squared away. But and when I say channel moderator, I don't mean he's just got the ranch. He's actually he's channel manager now. I appointed him as a manager, so he's hopefully he can help me get some of this stuff going again. But anyway, I'll finish up the chat here and then I'm going to sign off. Yeah, my dad has a Mossberg 20 gauge, and for years he bought a youth model, and for years he always complained because that thing would not cycle for him. And I told him, "You're short stroking it. You're short stroking it," and he just, he'd get frustrated with it. Well, when we was duck hunting, I finally told him that he needed to put a full stock on it. So I ordered a full stock kit, and then I had to modify it with a Dremel tool because it came in, the pump wouldn't go on the pump slide. But I put a full length stock on it, and my dad started shooting it, and he has not had a short stroke problem since. The problem now is he can't hit anything with it because he's having to relearn how to shoot it. But yeah, he's missed, I don't know how the hell, he missed 2 turkeys at 20 yards, both of them. He can knock a squirrel out of a tree with that Mossberg 20 yards up in a tree, hit it in the head, never get any pellets in the body, but stick a freaking turkey head out there, which is about the same size as a squirrel head, and he misses that every time. I don't know. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Mossbergs are good squirrel guns, that's for sure. And I used to be one of those that hunted squirrels with a rifle, but then I started shooting them with a shotgun. And I found out, a steel shot, number 4s, steel when I'm duck hunting, you can knock a squirrel out of the tree, and that don't tear them up too bad. You shoot them with a number 4 lead at the same distance, and you can't. With my 12 gauge, you can't eat them. They're so full of lead. Anyway, all right, I'm going to start to shut her down here, so I want to thank you all for joining in. It's been wonderful having you on. This has actually been a wonderful chat. I didn't think it would get that popular that fast, but I guess when you put Colt versus Remington in the title, it's going to draw the attention. So anyway, again, thank you all for joining on. Be sure to check us out next weekend for Tales of the Trails. We'll be covering the Southern Plains Indian Wars. Yeah, we'll call it good there. So like, share, subscribe as always, and stay tuned. Keep your powder dry. Night, y'all.